So, um, today we're talking about the opera as a piece of art, as an artwork and as a script. So I'm thinking this will inform. So I've forgotten how hard it is to breathe through these.
It is really though.
Really hot, it's super hot. Yes. How did we do this for 2 years? Wow.
If you have to take it off, Polly, you must wear them. So there's a blockage there.
Okay. All right. Do the best I can. So, and then what we're scheduled for on Wednesday is another drawing day, and this is to give time to absorb what we've talked about. And then think about character poses. So some of the research that I do while I'm researching operas or plays for that matter, is what kind of character poses or characters can I make? Not every project really lends itself to wacky poses. As a matter of fact, I work with some directors where wacky poses are annoying to them. Because the character's probably never going to be in that pose. So I kind of have to gauge when I know who I'm working with, what to do. But for opera and Shakespeare both, I try to get some real character suggestion into the costume design, as opposed to contemporary dress or other drama where what the actor looks like is probably not going to change. But we have a lot we can do on a big stage like an opera stage and in a fairly presentational format. I mean, people are already singing at the top of their lungs. It's not realism, right? So we can get away with quite a bit. So that's one thing that I would like to do on Wednesday as well. And we'll kind of be loosey-goosey on that, depending on who's here and who's not. It may be, if we're a small class, that you might want to use this time just for research, your own research, and then swing back and catch the rendering. So this is going to be that kind of week, whatever serves us best. So let's look at the project page. So these are the questions that we want, the 3 objectives, bearing in mind as we talk today that we want to keep in mind how Commedia dell'arte might have informed this production and how much pre-knowledge the audience brought with them. So you're already doing the sequel. Everyone knows the characters from Barbara of Seville. So in order to fully understand the characters, we have to go back and find out who they are in Barbara of Seville and if they've changed. So, and these are the questions that we want to think about today. So I'll just leave them up on the screen for us. So what we want to think about is plot, which is the flow. And I don't know about you, but opera plots are not as straightforward as I think. I end up in the margins going letter number 1. Letter number 2, ring 1, ring 3, you know, there's a lot of tropes that keep showing up. And then story, what is the impact of those events? What is the actual story we're telling? And then the script mechanics of it. So we'll touch on all of those things. Any questions before we start? I think I'll just sit in a circle with you all, if you don't mind. We just shared our great, thank you.
When we started, I did act 4 of this.
Okay.
I did act 1.
Okay,
great. And at the time I was like trying to get it down, and I was like, I'm gonna write down the plot of act 4, and then I'm gonna figure out what Marriage of Figaro is about.
Okay.
And then correct. It was impossible.
Oh dear.
And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go back to act 3. And I was like, I'm just no idea what's going on.
I didn't think about that aspect of sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should clarify the plot.
Maybe that was me trying to be easy, and the universe got me. I made the wrong choice. But I'm making the right choice. It was
You ran into some thing with just the all English version versus the English and
Oh, I didn't even try the all.
well, the all English one had the scene breaks in it, but The Italian and English did not.
No.
So that made it a little more complicated. It's like flipping back and forth.
Oh, so you have different information, which is great. That's good. You can read more than one. Until you get the official one. And in big opera companies, there's a production stage manager who decides what all the divisions are. Because of all this,
Yeah.
right? I mean, people have been arguing since the 1800s what to do with Mozart's work. So, ooh, can I get in without a push?
Maybe since you already got it, maybe it's clear.
I think this Google folder is where your chart is on UCI Google, right?
No, it was my personal. I just shared it to your email. H Durbin.
Oh, but it would be your UCI email.
I think my husband is in the car. We can't do it.
If you have a personal email you want me to share it with, if that's easier.
Maybe we can we can't submit it on Canvas.
No.
Yeah, there's no place to submit it, is there? But I make it. This is complicated.
It's you know what, this whole class is a adventure.
It's a day.
Oh, it has been a day.
Just embrace the chaos.
But on the good side, I went to the Hollywood Bowl on Saturday night for Brandy Carlisle.
There's people going to that.
The best concerts I have been to in a long. Did I what? Yes, they brought out Joni Mitchell as a surprise guest. I mean, it was incredible, and I've been kind of on a high since then. All that female energy.
When she came to Philly, my girlfriend was in concert. So he working that. He said that the kids were there. They were so cute. And it was just, she loved it.
It was amazing, and it really shows why we need Lilith Fair to come back. It probably was an unofficial Lilith Fair, now that I think about it. Oh well. So, okay. You have your scene chart. I will get it eventually.
Yes.
Let's just talk. That we can do. We can just enjoy this as an artwork without all the bells and whistles, since you've done the work. And I'll just look at my script. Most of my notes are in the script anyway. So this is me being old fashioned. I still, to this day, if I'm actually working on a show, have to print it out because I take a gerbillion notes. And I divide, in this case, I divide it by acts and songs, probably differently than you did your scene chart, which is fine. Scene chart is to serve you, so whatever format it takes, as long as you get the information. So I think the first thing to do is just talk about the plot. Let's figure out who's doing what to whom. So where does this take place?
They're
They're in a castle.
they're
Okay.
they're in the Count and Countess's castle.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't fully understand what Figaro's and Susanna's role.
They're servants.
Are they
Okay.
seven?
Yes,
They're
they're the servants.
Yeah, I bet. Because I guess that, yeah, everyone there is a servant.
It's okay, I took Act 1, so I kind of had the setting up of everything.
Okay, perfect.
You can
Perfect.
explain the end to me.
There you go.
And it was like, I was like, okay, this person's the gardener, this is the gardener's daughter, this
Mhm.
person. Cherubino, I don't
Oh.
really know what Cherubino's deal is, I assume he's also a servant.
Yeah. Okay. So in a castle. Where?
I was gonna say Italy too.
They're singing Italian, they're talking about Italian things, it's based on French theater, go figure. And Italian. However, one of the characters has to go to Seville. Yeah, so they are
Yes.
outside Seville, which is in Spain. Surprise. Oh, I love Seville.
And we literally just drove over to Spain for lunch one day
Yeah.
and then drove back.
Portugal's one of my,
Nobody stopped us, nobody checked our passports.
the EU, so interesting. Portugal is one of my favorite places under the sun. It's so underrated. Oh my gosh, I always told myself if I got a book deal that actually pays you, like other authors, not academic authors, I would write it in Sintra. That's my ultimate goal. Now I have to write a vampire novel or something people would actually read, right? So outside Seville, so this is their estate, the Count's estate. So they're Spanish.
Oh, that I didn't pick up on.
So the Count Almaviva and the Barber of Seville, they're all Spanish, but you wouldn't have any notion of that, which
Because Spanish and Italian also sound similar, so
Very
like they're saying Italian, they're
yeah. So this is the weird thing about opera, particularly Italian opera. It's not so weird in German opera. But Italian opera will set itself all over the world, but they're acting as if they live in a suburb. So it is complete fantasy. It's just, we just take it on faith that there's Spanish. So when does this take place? What year? Also not a straightforward question, so if you have to think about it, you're doing the right thing. This is what we have to do in order to design an opera, just be detectives.
a version of it, and they looked like they were in the maybe 18th century.
Everyone transposes this to every single time. Like it could possibly be in the. Never seems to go backwards. No one goes back to Rome to do it, but from the 18th century on up. So we have several dates that are important. So this Barber of Seville and Marriage of Figaro are based on stage plays that were done first. And there was a third play in which Cherubino actually dies, goes off to military service after all that threatening to go to service, finally does, and I believe dies, if I remember. I really don't quite remember, but so the plays were written in the late 1770s. The operas, though, this one was composed in 1786, so 10 years after it was a play, it became an opera. Kind of like Hamilton becoming a movie.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. So this is one of the things that directors ask themselves all the time. Where do I set this and when? There's evidence that it could be in 1786. There's evidence it could be in 1778, because when it was composed, when the play was written, it was modern dress. So then there's also a thought that we could do it in modern dress because that's how it was written.
There is the major plot point of like him legally being able to sleep with Suzanne.
That was crazy.
They had a lot about the laws back then.
Yeah, the right to video or whatever.
It was it's such a weird law. It's such a convoluted.
It's such a feudal law, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's going to answer one of our questions here about, are there any givens? I think is that one of my questions. Are there any givens that we have to deal with? Number 8. Are there any givens in this story that we have to deal with that if we don't, or assumptions, might it make the plot unwind?
It's either somehow we have to believe Susanna has to sleep with the Count.
Yeah.
And if that law isn't in place, they have to figure out some way for it
Yeah.
to still kind of make sense.
Yeah. And Figaro has to let it happen.
Did he know that that was a possibility? Because I feel like in the beginning of Act 1, he has an aria where he's like, "Oh my God, what?" Like,
Yeah.
freaking out about it.
Well, oh my God. What's so charming is in Barber of Seville, Figaro is the one that figures out all the stuff. He's the driver of the plot. But as soon as he gets involved with Susanna, she's the smart one. And he's an oh my God all the time. Oh my God. He's turned into a different character. It's quite a comeuppance. So they do make a mention in here that that is a law, but the Count undid it on his lands. So everyone's going forward happy, tra la la, we don't have to do that anymore. And then, except for Susanna.
The Count was a super weird character.
Yeah, he is.
Because it was also like, the law itself is weird. Of like, do you really need a law for this? You're kind of powerful, you can do whatever you want. I don't understand why you're trying to abide by laws. But I mean, I guess hats off, I don't know. But not hats off. But he's a lot of his, and he wants to be with the Countess. I don't know. He cares about the Countess, but he's like really like Suzanne.
Barbara of Seville was all about the Countess Rosina, is that her actual name? Rosina lived with her odious guardian Bartolo. And Bartolo wanted to marry her instead of let her marry Almaviva, the Count. So in Barbara of Seville, they're the love match.
Oh my gosh.
And the barber, Figaro, spends all this time machinating how to get Rosina away from Bartolo. So then this is down the road. Technically, it's 3 years after Barbara of Seville takes place, but it seems longer, doesn't it? So let's say 5 or 10 years or down the road of their marriage, and the Count is now bored.
Well, because Bartolo wants like revenge in this.
Yeah, Bartolo wants revenge because he should have married Rosina.
Okay.
And so we have the grumpy old man, miserly man, and the tender young heroine dynamic that we see in old literature.
And when I was reading it and listening to it, in my head, the Count was like old and scruffy.
Okay.
And then I watched a version of it. I was like, oh, he kind of looks just like Figaro.
Yeah.
So that was also
He's kind of Figaro's age. He was a young whippersnapper in Barbara of Seville.
which made some of his choices make a little bit more sense to me, because I guess in my head, like an older Count would be a little bit more vicious, whereas this Count seemed just shady.
Yeah.
Just a little too scrappy for so good.
Yes, and he does love Rosina, and Rosina loves him. It wasn't that long ago that they were having arias about that. So, but his mind wandered. He's bored.
He's allowed to do
He's a
something.
ladies' man. He's allowed to do that. I would never want to marry a super rich man because I understand that's a terrible problem. Because they can just pay people off and get away with it, right? So yeah, that's their story. So as we open up here, let's back and track and try to figure out the actual plot then. So as we open up, what's happening?
Well,
Funny we should ask.
I just read the plot points, but. Okay, so
Absolutely.
Susanna and Figaro are talking about their upcoming wedding. And then Figaro threats about what the Count might do with Susanna after he kind of finds out that's a thing. Bartolo and Marcelina plot to break up the engagement. I was a little confused about this. Marcelino wants to be with Figaro, and Bartolo, you want to be with Susanna, or do you just like want better for Susanna?
Bartolo does not want to be with Suzanne.
That's her old like music teacher.
Basilio is the new
Oh,
teacher.
they had similar.
I know, why can't they, this is the Lord of the Rings problem. They all sound alike. Barbarina and then Bartolo, Basilio. Yeah, maybe we should start by going down the list of characters, maybe, and that'll help sort us out. Okay, so the list of characters, we have the Count, so we talked a little bit about who he was and his backstory. Then we have the Countess, who's named Rosina, but now is just the Contessa. Susanna is Rosina's maid and is a commoner. But the Countess treats her like
Right.
they're more like best friends. Then there's Figaro, who is I believe he's technically the valet.
I'm watching Downton Abbey again. I was like,
The valet. Valet in British. But he's more like a personal assistant / valet. Cherubino is also a servant in the household.
He's a page.
He's a page.
He's pretty young.
And he's dating everyone.
He's just discovered the hormone. He has the hormone aria. Marcellina is the housekeeper, so she's the
Yeah.
head of all the household servants. Bartolo is the Rosina's old guardian.
And he's a lawyer.
Doctor, back in
Doctor.
the day, doctore meant you went to university. And so you been studied philosophy, law. you know.
Okay, so I saw he was a doctor and then he was like helping.
He's also a gardener?
No.
He's not
Antonio.
And
Oh, but Antonio's child is Barbarina.
Oh my god.
Okay,
I know, yeah.
nice.
Okay, so in Commedia dell'arte, there's a character just known as the Dottore. He's the Bartolo is the Dottore, the older scholarly wise man that's usually a fool, the educated man that's a fool.
Then the was interesting.
Yeah. Then Basilio is the singing teacher and Suzanne is studying with him. Now, why is the maid taking singing lessons? We don't know. But we just need another character in there. Okay. Basilio keeps coming up because Bartolo knows Susanna's taking singing lessons. So he has employed Basilio that whenever she's there for singing lessons to plead his cause, Bartolo's cause. Don't marry, to please the count's cause. Have an assignation with the count loves you. So Basilio is actually just a messenger go-between.
Okay, so Bartolo wants Susanna to sleep with the count?
Bartolo wants revenge on Figaro. And having Susanna sleep with the count would be.
Would be revenge. Okay.
And marry Marcelina.
And- Yes,
Just now, like, and just
yeah, this is one of the biggest in opera. It's like, whoop.
like, because at first I was dating Angela. And he was like, he was calling her mother. And then I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I went to the beginning and it was like, she wants to marry Figaro. And I was like, hang on a minute.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
Basilio, we just need a go-between.
Right, okay.
So imagine that everything that Bartolo does is fueled by revenge. And he's actually does have a revenge aria, vendetta, the vendetta aria.
They're having a double wedding, don't they?
We do.
We just, what a beautiful thing.
It is such a mess, such spaghetti turns into a beautiful thing. Then Don Curzio, who appears for mere moments.
I didn't even understand this one.
So he appears, I believe, in Act 3 for a moment. He's actually the local judge, the magistrate. And it was very famously played by an opera singer that could sing in stuttering.
Huh.
So he was a stutterer. The judge was a stuttering character, which played to, it just brought the house down. It was so funny, but that's not something we find funny today. Barbarina is the gardener's daughter.
Who gets caught with Cherubino?
Yes, so she and Cherubino are an item. Antonio is the gardener. And then we have the chorus that we get to make into
Right.
all the things we,
Okay.
okay.
This makes more sense now.
So it is helpful to me, each character gets an aria. And if you write down next to their name what their aria is about, that's the key to their character. So that's why I was saying Bartolo gets a revenge aria, so that's his total motivation. Okay, so then, now that we know who all the players
Yeah.
are. Woo-hoo. Okay, so we open Act 1. There's a plot that kind of goes full circle in Act 1. There's actually 3 plots to this opera. So the first one is what?
Susanna and Figaro trying to get married, but the count is getting in the way. of-
Okay, Susanna and Figaro trying to get married.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay.
That's all.
Worth writing that down. Plot A. Susanna and Figaro getting married tonight.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it all took place over one day. The
24
first one had
hours,
like
yeah.
a daytime task.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, wait.
The one opera where it doesn't matter, right? It's very much like a stage play. Okay, so Susanna and Figaro trying to get married. What's the impediment to that plot?
So-
Count.
Well, just
Okay.
like that.
Okay, Count
Yes.
Count Letchery.
Yes.
All right. And then part of that is the Countess. What's the Countess up to in the first act?
I don't actually think she's in the first act. Oh, is she on the first act?
Oh, no, you're right. She is not in the first act.
Oh, is that act two?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just talked about the Countess.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just go through all the music. So measuring the room, look at my little hat. The room is too close to the count. You know, sneak in at night.
Typing Cherubino.
Yeah, I mean. That was when I was like, I was making dinner and I was just trying to finish it. And I was like, what's he doing? He's just typing Cherubino up. That's doing.
Don Basilio is in on the pressure, just to pressure Susanna to do it. Then we have a cavatina, which is just a little aria. The Count Figaro wants to be deceitful with the Count. Figaro, he doesn't have the plan, she does. Then Bartolo, Marcellina shows up with the marriage contract. So Figaro borrowed money from Marcellina eons ago and said if he never paid her back, he would marry her instead.
That's a crazy contract.
Did he sign it? Too far in opera. And she waits till the day of the wedding, naturally, to remember she has the contract. So she wants to foil the marriage under the auspices of Bartolo. So this is still part of Bartolo getting even. Bartolo's in the background going, hey, don't you have a marriage contract with Figaro? Oh, yes, I do. Then we have Bartolo's revenge opera, La Vendetta. For stealing. Then the duet, Marcellina and Susanna. Oh, this is actually hilarious comedy. Number 5.
Yeah.
The duet. Marcellina and Susanna actually arrive at a door at the same time and can't get out. And so there's all kinds of after you, age before beauty kind of thing. And the insults get bigger and bigger. It's considered a very funny scene. And if it's directed well, it will be.
Yeah, I wrote Susanna and they're insulting each other.
Yes. Then enters Cherubino, who's now in trouble because he's been caught with Barbarina. And the Count is going to send him away. And then 6 aria is Cherubino's hormones aria, that's what I call it. I no longer know what I am, what I do. Now I'm on fire, now I'm ice. Hormones. Then Cherubino hides behind a chair.
Yeah, the stage directions of this group is very amusing.
They are. Then the Count comes in. The Count propositions Susanna. Basilio enters. The Count hides behind a chair, so you can imagine the stage directions. The Count goes behind the chair and Cherubino slips under a dress that's hanging on the chair. Forget why the Count wants to hide behind the door.
He doesn't want Basilio to.
Oh, so you want to say there. Yeah, thank you. Then enter Basilio.
When I was reading the like hiding under a dress thing, I thought she was like sitting and he was under it. And I thought that was hilarious.
That could be, that could be.
And then I like watched it. I would watch clips, particular scenes that I was like, Or I want to see how they did that.
That's very funny. A director could certainly do that. It can't be Susanna's dress because she has to run around, but
Yeah,
it could be another servant.
yeah.
That would be hilarious. I would love to see that. Just bring out a servant. Then Basilio counsels Susanna to control Cherubino. Cherubino's been giving eyes to the countess at all the dinners. The count overhears this because he's hiding, right? And then he has his song Cosa Sento. What did I just hear? Cherubino loves my wife. So just to distract them.
It's happening.
Love. My husband Michael. Hi. I don't know if you've met Rebecca. So hello. Thank you.
I just tested negative, so.
You're
You're
radical.
fine.
We're the threat.
And I got the super boosters.
Oh, yeah, you do. You already have your.
You do. Over the coverage. I gotta stay away from needles and things.
Secret rooms.
Yeah. Thank you. Now I can have my day. Okay. So the count here, oh, then to distract everyone to get out of this situation, we have people behind a chair, we have it's an underdress. Susanna pretends to faint. No, she pretends to. We only catch on to it later. There's a discussion about, oh, common women don't faint, but you fainted in the first act, so it's oh, I can't breathe. So she makes a distraction. This is part of her ability for wit, you know. Then the count discovers Cherubino hiding there. And banishes Cherubino off to military duty.
Cherubino's kind of living the count's dream.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Cherubino is going to turn into the count if he had money, but he's a servant. For sure.
Okay, this is the part I didn't understand. Because it didn't say that there was a scene change in this act,
Okay.
but why did all the villagers come into this room?
I know, it doesn't make sense. I've asked myself that
Like,
question.
is it
many
not
times.
Savannah Figaro's bedroom?
Yes, yes, yes. And so what we have to imagine is in large castles, you were given apartments, not just a
Right.
room. But still, that's
But
a
still
heck
they're
of
in
an
their
apartment.
And they're just like, just all the villagers
Yeah, all the villagers show up. And,
gathering flowers.
yeah, don't look for logic in it, for sure.
I was just like, did we change scenes and I missed it?
Oh, so this is total suspension of disbelief. And sometimes what will happen is, the director will shift it from one side of the stage to the other side of the stage, so we sort of forget where we're supposed to be. Like maybe we're in the front hall now, you know. So so Figaro has arranged for, this is part of the trickery, for some girls to come in and say, thank you for getting rid of the law. And the count is like, oh, you're welcome. And they're praising him for doing what for not doing what he's about to do. So Figaro's trying to make it, just publicly remind everyone that that won't happen. And then the count tells Cherubino that he has to go to the military. In Seville, report to Seville and become an officer. And then we have a very famous aria. This is one that a lot of people, you probably recognized it, that Cherubino sings about, Figaro sings that no longer will you be the butterfly going from flower to flower.
Figaro, I think Cherubino.
Yes, I think Cherubino, and that's Act 1 right there. So Act 1 is all about, plot A is all about Susanna and Figaro trying to thwart the count's lechery. Am I missing anything else?
Oh, other than Cherubino.
Oh, we have plot B in there. Cherubino and Barbarina.
Right.
Okay, which is, and Count hates that. For whatever reason. Unclear to me.
Because they're.
Yeah, I just don't know why that can't be. But it should be. Okay, Act Two.
Actually, Ashley did that.
Yes, Ashley took this one, so she's probably the most well versed in it,
Yeah.
but we can, if you wanna see our plot now, since you have your phone.
Oh my God.
You can put it up here.
So it was my email.
Yeah, I just, it's a Google, spreadsheet that I just shared.
So it should be on your email.
Yes. Or even in your Google.
In my drive.
Yeah.
There would be me.
Yeah, there, down, there it
It's
is.
bigger fruit chat that Ashley has.
Okay.
Very large.
Oh my gosh, it's huge. I started like shrinking the
Yeah.
thing, and I was like, Christian was working on it. I was like, I'm sorry, man, but like I can't see anything.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a way to, oh yeah, where it says 100% up in like the top kind of left. You could probably, no, oh. Like,
Below insert.
yes, you could probably make that like 75, oh, or. For that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right, so what happens in Act Two? What are the major plot streams here?
Oh, we need the countess.
Yes.
In Act Two.
Okay.
Cherubino and the countess, I think, have a little back and forth up there. No? Yeah? Yeah, because he has to jump out the window.
Right.
And the girl's like, no, it was me. And they're like, what's on this piece of paper? And he's like, oh, it's Cherubino's paper. That I had.
So Foxy, we should really call this a scenario. It's like its own standalone gag. Scenario C or plot C. So we're in the Countess's boudoir.
Is an intermission between each act?
No,
Is there an intermission at all?
yes.
Okay, just because I'm like, they changed the set from act to act. So I guess in my head, I was like, is that like a lot of work or like
They did like music stuff.
Yeah.
A
I
lot.
think you would scene to scene and
Right, oh, I guess.
The old fashioned way, when I started watching operas 30 years ago, these big old grand operas, not contemporary ones. The lights would go to half, they would bring the curtain in, and you'd hear backstage. Bang, 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 and they'd change the scenery, but they did it like lightning speed. And then the curtain would open again and you'd start, but contemporary audiences don't like that much anymore, so now we have all the, like the turntable stuff and all those things that take the place of that.
like that each act is like just in one room.
Yeah.
It feels like each act is a scene. Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of.
it's a well-made play, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's definitely based on a.
Yes.
So this whole act is really about who's in the Countess's bedroom and who's in the closet. And who jumps out the window. And the Countess and Cherubino do have quite a moment where she's kind of fussing over him and putting makeup on him. We're gonna dress you as a girl. Kind
So
of
that the
thing.
count will.
So the count, yeah, so later tonight, we are going to foil the Count.
And they kind of begin this plan.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They begin the plan that an imposter will meet the Count.
What? It took me till now to understand why they were dressing him as a girl. Because I was like, oh, are they dressing him as a girl because Like, if then no one will know he's in town, then he doesn't have.
There's that one too. We have two, we're gonna dress you like a girl some moments.
But there was so much of this, but because I had act for when the plot is like or this scene is happening, and I was like, it is this scene.
By then, they're dressing him as a girl just so the count won't know he's still in town.
Yeah,
But the first time they want to dress him as a girl is because they want an imposter to be.
The
to meet him.
switcheroo.
Yeah, the switcheroo. I think I have that right. stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So that tells me there's a lot of fooling around on stage with women and the countertenor. At the time, this would have been a countertenor, a man dressing as a woman. So there was a lot of oohing and cooing over, let's put makeup on you, let's put a hat on you. So this is kind of a big
Wait, was
trans
Tarantino
dressing moment.
a trouser,
Back when it was written, it would have been.
which was a woman, a man. Oh, the really high voice.
I think, because this was, oh no, maybe you're right. Is this an alto role?
I don't know, actually.
Let's check this. That will tell me. I want to tell you the right thing. So let's see, Cherubino, mezzo soprano or soprano.
Oh.
But is that how it was written?
This says breeches role, but this is Wikipedia, and I don't know if I trust that.
Yeah,
Breeches.
then it was written then it was written for a. thing.
So it's actually.
I'm just trying to remember
when
if
they
that's.
girl- It's a woman playing a man.
Yes. And I'm just trying to remember if that was true in the production or if that's what we do now, because we know it won't do that. So at any rate, we have a lot of goofing around with gender here. And that's why there's kind of extended songs about, oh, let's put on your hat, let's put on some makeup. Here, roll up your collar so the dress will fit, undo your shirt. You know, there's actually some kind of just, I don't know how to describe it. How would you describe it? So if we have a woman playing this role, undo your shirt,
Yeah, well,
that's kind of a big moment on stage.
Well,
I mean, obviously the shirt wouldn't be completely undone, but the very mention of let's undo your shirt. So it's kind of a little bit of erotica of some description, I guess, because they do it twice. They dress him up twice.
Yeah.
Or start to the first time and really do it the second time. Okay, so they're starting to dress Cherubino, the Countess is, and they get interrupted by the Count. Susanna's out of the room. She's out to get something. So Cherubino goes in the closet. Count wants to know who's in the closet. And so we have the whole, sitcom situation. No one's in the closet, blah, blah. So then how does that resolve itself?
Cherubino jumps out the window and Susanna makes her way like into the closet when the Count is
Okay.
like gone for a sec.
Okay, both the Count and the Countess are out of the room, I think.
Yeah, I think he's like looking for stuff to break open the door.
Mm.
And then Cherubino jumps out the window and he's like, no. And then Figaro's like, it was me.
It was me, I did it.
And then they find like a piece of paper and he's like, if it was you, what's on this piece of paper? And then Susanna and the Countess like help him say
They're like
that.
doing signals, like.
Yeah, and I think it's Cherubino's, is it his military letter?
Yes, the now report to Seville letter.
Yeah, and but then Antonio comes in and ruins it.
Okay.
Or Antonio's the one who found the letter?
Yeah, so there's a funny letter switch moment that too, because that makes fun of this whole opera in this, where the Count says to Figaro at some point, give me the letter, and he's like, I have so many, so many letters in this opera. I literally had to write them down. I think I came up with 5 letters. So I think there's a fake letter of commission and the real letter of commission.
Because it wasn't sealed, right?
Right.
There's another.
Yeah, there's one. So Figaro is just saying, oh, he doesn't have his commission and I need to get a seal, well, show me that, and we never showed it out that. Right? Then Antonio comes in with a real letter that was dropped while someone jumped out the window.
Oh,
So there's kind of a plot hole there. I think it just gives a person a reason to walk into a room, kind of thing. So it's kind of like watching a Hitchcock film. Don't contemplate the logic too much. As long as we can keep track of the thread that, and also what's very funny in the Closet Act is no two people know the same thing. Like Figaro was out of the room, so he doesn't know. And Susanna the Countess doesn't know. Susanna overheard and slipped into the closet. She thinks Cherubino's coming out of the closet. She doesn't know Cherubino went out the window. The Count doesn't know anything. So every single person doesn't know.
it's a very funny opera.
It
I think.
is.
And one thing I feel like we don't do as much anymore is like all these characters overlapping plots. I feel like I only see it in like Shakespeare and Commedia dell'arte stuff.
Yes, I think you're right. We've lost track of all the subplots, haven't we?
And I
And
think-
stories.
It's kind of what people like about sitcoms, like
Modern Family is always the first one that comes to mind, since like the three different families, plot A, plot B, plot C.
yeah,
And it's always like, they all work their way into the same overall plot, and there's like separate
Friends,
things.
yes. Right, all these characters overarching plots, and then they kind of come together with everyone like jumping on each other on a table.
So is the sitcom the modern?
But the sitcom is dead, I feel like.
No.
It's dying, I feel like we like a independent character study these days. You know, like Fleabag, I love Fleabag,
Love Fleabag.
but I feel like we want to get to know one character super well. And I want a bunch of characters engaging in this. And then also, I want both of them.
I just read an article that the producer and director of Frasier is bringing that back. Under the guise that sitcoms have died, and he wants to see about kind of being redone. So I don't know. I can see. Curious.
It'll make a comeback. It'll come back around. It comes back around.
So we end the act. I'm in Act 2. So yes, we end the
Yeah.
act. Enter Marcelina Basilio Bartolo. Letter number 3, the marriage contract, and Bartolo acts as her lawyer. So we're back to the marriage contract. Then there's really frantic music. We end this opera on this act on a very frantic note of victories before us. There's groups of singers, victories before us. Oh no, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Victories before us. Act 3.
A great hall and a cat. I didn't write it. Yeah, this was Christian. This is Kristen.
All in the castle. So finally get to a room big enough for the village. Okay. So what are the main plots or scenarios in this one?
They're trying to get the count to go to the garden later that night.
Okay.
And I think they start this whole, send him the letter with the pin towards the end, I think.
Okay. Yes. So this is right before the actual wedding.
Yeah, and we find out that, because Marcella is trying to like get him to marry her.
Remember the contract?
Yeah, she's like, remember, you can't marry Susanna. And then they find out, and he's like, I can't do this because
I need permission from my parents.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah. Like it didn't matter with Susanna, but suddenly
yeah,
it matters.
and then Marcella's like, oh my god, you're my child, and Marcella is also like, we had a child together. You're like, excuse me. And now they want to get married, and then they have a double wedding.
Amazing.
And then Antonio snitching. And I think he tells the Count about Cherubino not being out of town.
Okay, yes, this is what Antonio's here for.
To be a snitch. I like how Kristen just wrote entire village. One point.
Oh, yeah.
And then. This
Then,
so much happens. Yeah.
so, one plot is wrapped up. The Marcellina scenario is wrapped up. Can't marry, Figaro's free to marry Susanna. So Bartolos does not get revenge. And then now we go on to the next ruse, which is meeting the count in the garden.
Yes.
And so someone has to meet the count.
And Figaro doesn't seem to know about it.
No, this is between the Countess and Susanna.
So they really are like buddies.
They're
Like,
buddies.
They're like
Yeah,
scheming.
they're scheming buddies, and so they're gonna switch clothing. And so that the Countess will meet the Count and have an assignation with her own husband and then call him on it,
Yes.
and he'll be chagrined. And Susanna will be safe. So that's the thought.
But what was the point? I understand why the Countess would.
What is
Susanna, but why is Susanna dressed?
Just to switch clothes,
Oh,
so they can be seen in the garden. And
oh,
there's actually a bit of a dumb show that
Okay.
goes on in the garden where Susanna, unless you actually see a production, it's very hard to tell. Susanna's singing the song, but the Countess is the one walking around in the garden looking for the Count in Susanna's clothing. But Susanna is actually in a shrub singing about
Very
this.
Cyrano.
Yeah, so there's a dumb show. Where's the Count? Here I am, dear. Let's, but it has to be Susanna's voice singing that. Okay, and in the meantime, Cherubino's still hanging around.
we meet Barbarina.
We meet Barbarina finally.
Really? After all this talk about Barbarina.
Yes, so that her dad obviously wants to keep locked up because she's off kissing people all the time. Including Cherubino. Cherubino's not the only one, we find out. And so we have to dress Cherubino as one of the village girls, just so the Count doesn't know he's still in town. Such a silly moment. We're just bound and determined to switch that gender stuff around, aren't we? So then so Susanna and the Countess have this long, no, I won't meet you. Yes, I'll meet you. No, I won't meet you. Yes, I meet you. And then she sends him yet another letter. So this is letter number 4 or 5. And the Countess seals it with her pin. And then what happens?
Cherubino and Barbarina get married by the end of this, don't they?
Yes, they do. Okay, so during the wedding, we actually get a wedding march done. Dun, dun, dun. So they actually do get married.
And then she gives the Count the letter at the wedding.
Yes.
And Figaro is like, sees him prick his, he doesn't know what's going on, and he sees him prick his finger, and he's like, and doesn't know the significance of them pricking.
It just gives us on stage something to,
Oh, so it's
a
not
big reaction. Figaro has to see something. No,
Oh.
it's not, but it'll come up later because Arena lost the pin, it's just another
And it
motif, really.
ends up being kind of ironic because he doesn't know that inside, like what he pricked his finger on is like his wife.
His wife's pin, no, he has no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, he thinks it's all from Susanna. So, so there's a big dumb show during the wedding of here's the letter, ouch, my finger. Figaro sees it, he doesn't know his wife is Susanna's up to another scheme here. He's still afraid the Count is gonna sleep with Susanna.
Wedding day.
Susanna's everywhere.
Like 4 different schemes.
And
And she gets married.
I think I read that this is the biggest opera role in the whole canon that spends the most time on stage, literally on stage.
Susanna.
Susanna.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a real driver. Okay, so we get to Act 4. It's finally night, the castle garden.
Barbarina loses the pin.
Okay, Margarita enters.
Which was one of the reasons why I had to go back to the first act, because I was like, who is Barbarina and what is going on? And going back actually didn't help much with that.
No.
Why? But it gave me peace in not knowing.
It's literally a device, you know. When you see enough of these operas, there's always a ring, a pin, a locket.
Yeah.
It's a plot
There's also
device.
a ring in this.
A ring.
It's a
Yeah, a ring and a pin, double
Um,
jewelry opera.
and so Barbarina loses the pin and she's freaking out, and then she runs into Figaro and Marcellina, and she's like, I love Susanna's pin.
Wait, Barbarina and Figaro are.
Calls her cousin.
They call each other cousin in Italian. That's in Italian culture. That's literally anyone you might be somewhat related to.
And I imagine they were all closer related back in the day.
Yeah, I imagine.
Village.
Exactly, in the village.
Exactly. And then she runs into Figaro and Marcellina. She's like, I love Susanna's pin. She didn't say it's Susanna's, but he figures it out.
Mhm.
And then he is super plucked about it and thinks Susanna wants to sleep with the Count and is going to do it behind his back. And then he has like a whole number where he's just like, oh, women, I can't believe, well, that's later. He's just
Women
like,
are witches.
yeah, he's like, women are fierce.
Yes.
And he's like, I will have vengeance. And then his mom is like, "Louis, you calm down."
Yeah, suddenly we have a complete change of character here. Marcellina, who we had the whole door scene with, that Susanna hates, and then the wedding scene. She flips and she's now the wise person to Figaro. You don't know who's tricking whom. Let's just.
In just watching and listening to Act 4, I was like, Figaro's kind of is a jerk. But then when I watched the rest of it, I'm like, I like Figaro a lot. I think he's very fun.
He's a likable character, I think.
I think so. I think him and Susanna, I really like them as a couple. I think they're two really cool characters.
Yeah.
And then Figaro has this turn. And so he storms away. And then Marcellina is like, I gotta tell Marcellina, she's like, I gotta tell Susanna. And then she's like, men and women, animals get along better than men and women.
It's so true. I love that observation.
And then Barbarina has another short little bit where she's just like, and then Figaro tries to get Vasilia and Bartolo to like help him.
Yes, this is very vague, and this is one of those things you have to ask the director what they're thinking of. You come in with workers, he comes in with workers. He wants to catch the Count and Susanna in the act and have some kind of public humiliation.
Okay.
But I don't know why you need workers to do that. What are you doing? But
I thought he wanted to like fight him or something.
maybe it's just
Maybe bring
helpers, or yeah, so maybe. But that's really unclear, and the director has to stage it.
But then I realized, I feel like the men he's asking help from are kind of old. And they might not be that much help.
That would be part of the comedy too. These are my helpers, one's blind, one's lame, one. Yes, you can do the whole hear no evil, see no evil business. There's a lot of comedy in this.
So he tries to get help from them, and then Bartolo is like, I tried to mess with some rich people once. It did not go well, my guy. I would just give in.
Yeah.
And then Figaro has his whole number about women are the worst. Never trust a woman first. And then Susanna and the Countess disguise each other, begin their plan with Marcellina. And then Figaro eavesdropping in a bush, and she realizes that, and she's like, I'm gonna mess with him for not trusting me. Which is kind of funny, because then she sings a song that's like heard Figaro's song to the Count, allegedly, he thinks.
Yes.
And he's so upset.
And that's the one where Susanna's singing. But the Countess is walking around the garden. So Figaro's hearing Susanna's voice. It has to be very dark on stage for this humor to work.
The one, when I watched the recreation, it was just the opera. It was quite dark.
And I saw one production where they did the opposite. They snapped all the lights on.
Oh.
And everyone pretended they were blind and did the scene, and it was like marching through, I can't see you, or is that Susanna? It was very peculiar, but it actually made me think about the mechanics of that very deeply. I was in London. So yes, it really can't, this is really best done when people truly can't see each other.
And then Figaro is blocked. And then Cherubim comes in and he starts like messing with Susanna, and they're like, you have got to get out of here, man. You're ruining everything. And then the Count arrives and he thinks he's seducing Susanna, but he's actually seducing, well, he's not really seducing.
Yeah.
He's trying to sleep with the Countess.
Oh, but let's just go back to one little thing right before the Count arrives. There's another comedy moment. When you said Cherubino was messing with Susanna,
Yeah.
what actually goes on there? That's an important moment.
Well, he's actually messing with the Countess. Because she's just as Susanna.
Right.
And he almost ruins the entire thing.
Yeah, so he tries to kiss Susanna.
Yes.
And that because they can't see each other, he actually accidentally kisses the Count. And the Count whopped him.
Forgot about that. Then
Yeah, there's a lot of blind trickery going on here.
Figaro doesn't.
Oh, is it Figaro? Maybe, yeah.
I think he tries to punch Cherubino and then punches Figaro. Is that what?
Let's see,
There's-
punching. Count makes a swipe at Cherubino, but strikes Figaro instead. So they're all right there and they can't see each other. So when they make a punch, they accidentally hit the wrong person.
Which was also confusing to me because I was like, how did he know that wasn't the Countess kissing him? And he punches a woman.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of, and what's so beautiful about this is everyone's there and they can't see. This is such a great metaphor. You can't see what's happening in front of your eyes, and isn't that true of our waking life, our daily life too? You can't see what's going on. And this is a wonderful moment of that. So keep going, I interrupted you.
And so the Count begins to try and like seduce Susanna, who's actually the Countess. And then the Count. It's not the end of it. Oh, maybe that's the end of it. Then the Count and the Countess go off stage.
Mm-hmm.
And then Figaro and Susanna make up.
Mm-hmm.
I think after that scene.
Yes.
And then Figaro starts messing with Susanna. I think she slaps him. And the Count believes that Figaro is in love with the Countess because Susanna's dressed as the Countess. And then he fights Figaro. And I think it enlists other people to help fight Figaro.
Yes.
And then the Countess is like, actually, I am the Countess and I'm not Susanna. And he's like, oh, that's my bad. Oh, I'm so sorry.
And then he realized, oh, super my bad.
And then he like begs for her forgiveness and
Yes.
she takes him back.
He takes it back. They're married, you know.
And then I think I wrote happily ever after.
Happily ever after, double wedding, happily ever after.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks about how funny life is. Only love resolve this day of torments.
What a day.
What a
Day they all
like weird. It was weird when I didn't read ahead of time because it's just this really convoluted plot playing out.
Absolutely.
And it makes more sense now that I've read the whole thing. But
Yes.
it's quite the plot they got together.
There's a lot going on here, and when it's well staged, it's easier to follow clearly.
I had to watch it to like figure out kind of what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hilarious if it's staged as comedy, which it most often is, which is one reason why it's so popular. It's just practically a laugh a minute by opera standards, right? It's pretty seriously funny. And it's a beautiful piece of literature too. So now that you've got the plot down, give some thought to what the mechanics of it, what it might stand for, and metaphors and things like that. It's really a beautiful play and a beautiful piece of music too.
I was gonna say, I feel like the women are a little bit more empowered than some women in plays from this time. She's under law that she has to sleep with someone if she doesn't want to, but she's scheming her way out of it in a very clever way
Absolutely.
with another woman.
Absolutely. And this was quite common in Commedia dell'arte because it was a place for the people. So women were much smarter in Commedia than in court art, where everyone's trying to flatter the king. So which characters, from your knowledge of Commedia, what characters can you say are based on Commedia stereotypes? We already talked about Bartolo being the Dottore character.
I'm trying to look up their names.
I just looked up Commedia dell'arte again. I'm trying to remember when school did it, we didn't do the full cast. Is that normal?
Yes, there's more characters than can appear in any one play.
Okay.
So it's like a sitcom where not every character appears every time, but they're part of the world.
Okay, so.
Well, the Harlequin type character, right, is usually kind of like a loyal servant, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Which Antonio's kind of a loyal servant, but he's not. I don't know that he's particularly funny.
No.
Which I feel like the Harlequin's usually kind of funny.
Yeah, he literally walks on stage to foil the plot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He is the definition of the foil.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's his role. So he would be a plot foil next to him. So one of the structures that Commedia really depended on was, unlike court drama, nobles idiots and the servants are the wise ones. They're the ones that really get things going and undo all the stupid things that the nobility get themselves into. I don't know if you are familiar with Wooster, Jeeves and Bertie Wooster. It's a 1920s to 1950s series of books in Britain that was based on the same thing. Bertie Wooster was the aristocrat and Jeeves was the butler that was smart, and Bertie was wealthy as all get out and just an idiot and got himself into scrape after scrape. And it was a huge send-up of the ruling classes. So Commedia is a send-up of the ruling classes. So what do you think of the Count and the Countess here, given this is a Commedia situation? Okay. La Signore.
Maybe.
So the role of the Count in this plot, if you think about it, why is he in the plot? Does he really ever have to appear on stage?
The Count?
The Count.
Not really.
Messes everything up.
Okay. We probably could just talk about him the entire time.
He could be just a passive threat that, like, just talking about him, I think, is enough for the most part. I think the plot happening at the end.
Yeah.
Yes,
we need him there. You're right.
Leave the stage.
He does. Yeah. So he exists in the plot. You said threat.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to put a keyword on him. He's the threat. He's the most powerful person in the opera. And if he weren't there, everyone would just go back in business and do what they wanted. But they have to get around him.
He's kind of the villain of the piece, but he's also like, he's not particularly like an aggressive villain.
Okay.
Their way to stop him is just to make him feel embarrassed.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This is so
Yeah.
embarrassing."
So he's ultimately a good guy as counts go.
Sure, yeah. He's a little bit more pathetic than I think he's motivated by being pathetic more than he is like you're evil.
Yeah, he isn't pure evil. That's such a good observation, and particularly since this audience would have known in the last opera, he was the young lover. So, and we rooted for him. He was an idiot and Figaro had to do all the work for him, but he was the love interest, so he's not a bad guy. We like him. And he loves his wife.
He's a man born into wealth in a very bad time to be a man born into wealth.
And he's fine with it. He wants to be in charge of everyone, everything. That's great. I would too, I guess. That ever befell me, I wouldn't give it away. Then what about the Countess? What do we think about her?
Well, it's because there's the one that's kind of like they usually like married to the Harlequin, who's like a kind of funny woman character in Commedia dell'arte. I can't remember what it's called, but he's not the Harlequin, so I don't know if she counts for that. But she's like she feels like the second woman character.
You've hit it. I can't remember the female Harlequin's name. But that's right. We have two sets going here. We have a Count and Countess, and we have Figaro and Susanna.
Right.
So Figaro and Susanna actually are servants, so they fall more toward the Harlequin stereotype. They're the clever servants that drive everything.
Columbina.
Columbina, that's it. Thank you. So
Yeah,
Harlequin and Columbina are definitely our Figaro and Susanna pairing. They have stepped forward in this art form. Instead of being literally dressed in funny triangles and clown suits, they are dressed like servants. Then what kind of character would Basilio be? The singing teacher? So he's an authority figure, somewhat in the rank. We don't have to find a Commedia character. We can just find the keyword. So he's in the world, in Bartolo's world. He's in thrall or answers to Bartolo.
He's kind of a messenger for the like as far as the plot goes. That's kind of what he serves, I think.
Okay.
Because I felt like I barely understood who he was, except for when he's saying like the cat's pretty neat. Yeah.
Okay. So he's like a minion.
Yeah.
Bartolo's minion. So that might be a clue. If you as a person, as an audience member, my glasses. Oh yeah. If you as an audience member can't tell who this character is, that could inform you as a costume designer that you might need to help that situation along.
True.
How are you going to help the audience understand who this guy is that wanders in now and then? What role he plays. So just tuck that in your mind. And Barbarina, what kind of character is she?
She doesn't. They talk a lot about her, or not a lot about, but they talk about her for like 2 acts, and she doesn't appear until the end.
Okay.
And she. I found her to be kind of an odd character. She also just kind of helps fill in plot gaps. I feel
She
like
does.
Yeah. And she's kind of a plot device. She's kind of a plot device.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I guess she kind of helps Cherubino's arc along a little bit. Because we don't really need her at the end. I guess she's helpful with the like, I lost the pin. But there's like 3 other characters who could have done that. It wouldn't have really changed the plot.
Okay.
So it feels like her main purpose is Cherubino and getting him out of trouble by marrying him.
Okay. And getting him in trouble by being caught with him.
Yeah.
So she literally is a plot device.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so she's a plot driver.
Woo.
That's fun. And then we know Antonio, her father's a plot foil,
Yeah.
and Marcellina.
Where do you think it goes from being one of the villains to like one of the heroes? Kind of interesting arc.
Interesting.
She has a really interesting arc, starting as like wanting to marry Figaro and then
Yeah.
being such an eternal character towards the end.
Very so easy for her to like switch. Like,
All of a sudden,
that's
that's a tricky character to costume.
yeah.
So in modern parlance, we would consider this person a shapeshifter. She starts out as one thing and turns into another. So how would you rank these characters by power? Who's the most powerful?
Count.
Okay. And then,
Countess, I think.
okay. She's the only one that can rule the count,
Yeah.
but by devious methods.
And then it feels like it might be Bertolo.
That's what I was gonna say.
Bartolo, okay.
Just because he has, I mean, he can defend himself in a court of law.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
Figaro can't do.
Fair.
Right, so he's an educated man, another householder in town. He's not an aristocrat.
And then I feel like the rest of them are like,
Well, I think Susanna might have more power because of how close she is with the count. Maybe.
So
Countess.
That's a good point.
Like more power than Marcellina.
And maybe more power than Figaro.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say Figaro next, but I think you might be right because there's no royalty on Figaro's side. I
Right.
guess they're not royalty, but
Well.
nobility.
Well, Susanna's like, I have the ideas, and Figaro's just like, oh no. My fiance. Oh no.
My eyes. Okay, so Susanna, and then do you want to put Marcellina or do you want to put Figaro?
Well, I Figaro next because Marcellina,
She doesn't really have much.
Okay.
yeah.
So then Marcellina, because she has the law on her side, so at some point she has something.
And I think Cherubino definitely has like very little powers. Everyone's just like, here's what you're gonna do.
Okay.
He's on the bottom because he wants to get into trouble.
Right.
So he's just moved to
Like a pretty young. Oh, yeah. He's like 16.
I mean, we all get a chuckle out of that. They've all been there.
Oh, Don Theo is fairly high. He's not particularly relevant.
No.
Okay. So he's in Bartolo's world there.
Oh, judge, right.
So he's the judge. So we have,
Oh.
so along with Bartolo, we can kind of put next to them Basilio and Tertio, who really just get their power from being associated with Bartolo.
And I say then it's like Barbarina, Antonio, Cherubino.
Barbarina.
Yeah. Because Antonio's just like, he's like, I know my life will be better if I just help the count. So I'm just gonna do that. And then Barbarina's locked in like a tower by Anne.
Yes, pretty much locked in the shed all the time.
Oh, well then maybe it's Antonio.
Okay.
Yeah. Cherubino has probably the ability to have a little bit more power, but he has not shown.
Kind of going along with what everybody tells you though.
Yeah,
Like, he doesn't have his own ideas.
he hasn't made the choice to make good choices.
It's not there
Fair enough.
yet. Okay. Okay, that's a good ranking.
Yeah.
Cherubino and Barbarina are kind of on the bottom, aren't they?
Yeah.
You kind of are.
A good couple.
That is a good coupling. Okay, good. Now you know the play very, very well. The plot and the flow.
Is Marriage of Figaro more famous or is Barber of Seville more famous?
Well, Barbara Seville is more famous.
Mhm.
Even Bugs Bunny did. Rabbit of Seville. I don't know if you've seen that cartoon,
Yeah.
but Marriage of Figaro, because it's so hilarious, it's
Actually,
actually
we're
performed
seeing,
great.
Barber
I've seen
Seville.
Barbara, so you actually know both. Full story.
Is Barbara Seville funny? Or is
Yes,
it?
it's also
Good, good.
but it's not quite sitcom like this. They're not smacking people in the dark. And I think this one, people enjoy it so much because Suzanne is the driving factor and people really like to see this plot as opposed to Figaro, stealing Rosina away from the bad old town.
It's kind of nice. I just feel like a lot of older plays, I don't love the main couple. The guy usually does something that irritates me at one point, and then the woman's like, I forgive you.
Yeah,
Kind of like the count and the countess. But like Figaro's just like along for the ride. I don't love his whole thing about like, oh, women are garbage.
yeah.
He thinks she's cheating on him because she wasn't communicating.
Yeah, he's at his lowest there, isn't he? I
And
mean,
it's pretty short.
yeah, it is. He's just lashing out like it is a man's world in this world, so men do tend to fall back on being men.
He gives
At
me
some
enough
point.
charm early on that
Yeah,
I can forgive.
he really is quite, and it is his worst moment, so, And that's what makes great music, your worst moment and your best moment makes great. Okay, so what's the impact of this story? Why are we telling it?
Well, there is like something to be said about the working class people being just at the mercy of idiots
Okay,
and having to work around that at this
Okay.
time.
all right,
And how like why does the count have all the power? He's an idiot. He's a ridiculous fool.
or a troublesome one.
He's a troublesome fool.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
he's got all the power over us.
Yeah, he undid a law that was bad for women, and then he was like, oh, but this one's hot. Oh no.
Yeah, so, yeah. Capricious, troublesome. And he has the power to send Cherubino off to the war.
Yeah.
So all of these people are locked into their employment with this person. And they can't just get another job. That's not how it works. So the power is absolute. So how interesting to make a device where the people in power maybe shouldn't be, who's really running the world here? Which is definitely the whole message behind Commedia dell'arte. Who's really doing the work here? We've been asking ourselves that for a very long time.
Did nobility, were they angry about a lot of Commedia dell'arte pieces? Or do they not see them?
I'm unclear how many really saw them. They, in Italy particularly, they were performed on the street. So I'm sure a lot of them saw it, but just really chalked it up to people's, that's the people's play, like a soap opera. Some people won't watch a soap opera because it's beneath me.
Because the plays they would bring to royalty were always like, oh, and the king is the hero.
Yes, that was the official entertainment.
It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. Plus, this is the same cultures that have carnival, where they turn everything upside down for a time, and the Catholic Church has that release. So I think this was completely acceptable. And I'm sure aristocrats knew of other aristocrats that probably shouldn't be, but they are.
I feel like it's about them. It's not
Yeah,
about
so
me.
I'm not that kind of master. I'm a good master. So we talked about the given in this story. The one detail that we as an audience need to get through here is, why doesn't Susanna just deck the count and get a different job? Why do we have to go through all of this machination to fool the count and not upset the countess and all of that? So can we believe this scenario today if it were to take place today?
I think we have to change it. Like I always love when they turn like a Shakespeare play into like a teen rom-com, because I like seeing how they changed Taming of the Shrew into 10 Things I Hate About You is fascinating. Because I think Taming of the Shrew is one of the most
It is very difficult to do these days.
But it's like my favorite rom.
Okay,
10 Things I Hate About You, not
no, right,
Um,
right.
and it's like it, you just change it a little bit, I think, I do wonder about this, how a woman is put in a position to feel compelled to sleep with this man, and it's funny.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, if we were to turn this into Harvey Weinstein instead of the Count, we would totally believe this situation. And I'm willing to bet in 10 years, people will do that. I think it's too soon now.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is like there's ways to make it modern, but I don't know that it's funny modern.
Yeah, now we don't find it funny.
Yeah.
So there has to be enough power at stake for us to believe Susanna could not object, so it does happen still today.
And there's like the element of this law where like if Figaro sleeps with her, can't do it anymore. Is that the deal?
Yeah.
Which
How
is
do we get around that?
yeah.
I can certainly believe that a man is trying to seduce a woman inappropriately. But when we're singing about the law, that's kind of a given there that we can't get past. It's a little bit like the whole virginity situation in Much Ado About Nothing.
Yeah.
Every time I do that production, the first question I have for the director is, how are we going to believe that that's important?
I think you would have to, in order to make it modern and like still funny, I think you have to lower the stakes essentially. Because it I think just has to be like, oh, this rich guy's trying to get with my fiance. It's annoying. Let's stop him from cheating on his wife more so. It probably becomes more about the Countess.
And make the Countess so likable. We're doing this because we like the Countess, so we don't.
We're trying to help the Countess rather than like Susanna.
That element is definitely in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're helping the Countess. Okay, that's a good one. So the reason this is important is it does kind of make us settle into what kind of period we think is appropriate to do this opera. So you do not have to do it in 18th century if you don't want. I would adore it if you did, but you will have a class in 18th and 19th century design. So you will get that opportunity. It is often transposed, but it's often done in 18th century. This is probably the one I see the most in 18th century.
Seems easier to do it like it, because also if you're doing like a film adaptation of something or like a just a play, you can change dialogue a little bit to make it make more sense depending on the play you pick and the rights. But in opera, it's just gonna be performed the same way every time. So you have to give context clues about what's different about this.
It is. You can shuffle the words just a little. Mozart can't send the piece after you. He's been dead a very long time. But opera fans know the deal. So you can shuffle a word as long as it fits into the music. So you can maybe say seduce instead. But a lot of your singers are already going to have learned it the other way.
Yeah.
So you just have to get them to shuffle it. So it's a little trickier in opera, but opera audiences just agree to suspend disbelief in a giant way. Giant way.
We do that with Shakespeare too, I think, where it's like, if we make it a more modern Shakespeare, but don't change any of the words, sometimes it's like, I'm fine, I'll ignore that line, that's fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
We just live with it, even though that makes no sense. If you were to come down from Mars and see that would not be a logical decision.
Yeah,
it's
like I've seen Romeo and Juliet so many times. The fact that we're on a spaceship right now is like that line makes sense. I got it. I understand the context.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it's the first time you're seeing Romeo and Juliet, you're probably like, he's doing that. What?
Exactly. So what you have just described is really the core of this opera and many operas in particular, is that audiences arrive with a great deal of understanding of what it is and can be fairly forgiving if you do a heartfelt transposition of some kind. Will they agree with you? No, but They will come see it, they'll give it a whirl, and then they may or may not agree. So, give this some thought about what period you'd like to put this in and be able to justify why you think that period works. I would like it to not be anything past the 1930s, I think.
Okay.
And just consider that you do have a couple of gags. You have to have someone hide under a dress. You have to dress a man as a woman, or a woman as a man as a woman situation. And so there's many ways to do that, but if the clothing is very small, then maybe they're not carrying a dress, maybe they're carrying a robe or something. You have to think about that. So what manner of presentation do you think is needed for this story? Is it realistic, descriptive? Is it evocative? Or is it presentational?
Yeah, my instinct is presentational because of how funny it is of a play that I think has a little bit of like, I think it's the funniest option of the three. I don't think realistic is particularly necessary.
Okay.
I think given its period, make it period realistic.
Okay.
But I guess evocative could be helpful,
Mhm.
but I think presentational just because like it's funny, so I think having like bigger things is funnier,
Okay.
and because it's opera, so they're not doing all this choreography necessarily.
There'll be some, but not like a stage play, nothing near.
Yeah, so I think that'll, and I think the presentational can give you more opportunities to be loud about who these characters are.
Okay. All right. The scenery and the costumes in opera are often in different worlds like this. That's another thing that's very unusual, and you'll see it in Shakespeare as well, where the scenery might be quite evocative and abstract, but everyone else is walking around in completely realistic clothing. We see that's another thing we just take for granted in contemporary practice now. Is everyone's standing in front of a big green square, and I'm fine with that. I think that's a place. But again, if you were to come down from Mars, you think, why is there a big green square stage?
One of the new more recent falsettos productions on Broadway was like, it was just cubes.
Okay.
And they would take all these cubes out of a giant cube and you'd be like, living room.
Okay.
We're in a living room. I know where we are.
Very evocative.
Yeah.
So what were their clothes then? Which
Here at 1970s, housewife, child, like knew exactly what, very simple clothes,
right.
but cubes.
Definitely, you do have to marry them. It can't look like accidental design. So the fact that those clothes are probably quite simple, married into the evocative scenery quite well. But
They throw like a doily on a cube.
Okay.
And you'd be like, table.
Tea table.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that could be going on in your opera as well. Might be just a window and a couple of doors and you're in full costume. If it's helpful to you to find some kind of a visual element of what your scenery will look like, then go ahead and find an image that speaks to you. Sometimes it helps me to understand what I think my environment should be. You're the director on this. So how do you describe the mood or the tone of this opera?
I mean, it has comedic elements, but I feel like the undertone is more. Oh. Like, I want to say there's an element of female empowerment and like taking back
Okay,
what's been taken from them,
all right.
but also there's a lot of men telling them what to do. So
Telling is a good word.
yeah.
Telling, yes. This opera is not one with a bunch of those showstopper arias. Queen of the Night does not come out
Right.
in this opera. So what does the music sound like overall?
It was interesting to me because particularly Act 4 was where I watched the most, but I did watch earlier scenes. Act 4 felt very serious music wise.
Okay,
But earlier in the play, it does feel a little bit lighter,
okay,
which I thought was interesting.
yeah,
Go from that to like
okay.
the plot being a little bit more serious, for an entire act. Um, it definitely wasn't as intense as some of the other operas I've listened to.
Mm-hmm.
But it had a mix of levity and a little bit more seriousness, I thought.
Okay,
Which I thought was odd because it is a funny opera. I would
right,
think it's light the entire time.
right, but it's not. There's definitely people in love, people betrayed, people scared.
It's because the characters are serious
Mhm.
about in their minds, which I think is often like how comedy has to work, is like the characters are very serious. This isn't a joke to them.
True, it's
This is
true.
serious.
That's a great distinction to make. Okay,
We find it funny, but in the moment there, like, this is.
yeah,
Yeah. Their life is funny to us,
Right,
not funny to them.
yeah.
funny to them.
No.
And there are multiple times where everyone has different information in the room, so we see 5 things going on, they only see 1 each. It's a lot to keep track of, but we can see 5 things. Oh, she knows, he doesn't know, that they know, they don't know. It's really quite an intellectual sorting job.
I've heard a lot of actors get notes on playing comedy being like, stop trying to be funny. Be serious. Your character doesn't think this is funny at all.
No, you're right.
The writing
That's
is
right.
funny.
Yeah, let the situation be funny, not you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think that might inform the costumes? These characters are serious about themselves. But they're doing hilarious stuff, but they don't know it.
Because there's a road of like, you could make them kind of outrageous, you can make them look funny, but I think that could also do a disservice by being like clowns. It's a little bit more razzle dazzle to do that to a certain degree. But if you, I think, trust that like the situation, the script itself and the actors are gonna be funny, and I think you can make it a little bit more, a little less crazy.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with either choice though. I think they just bring different things. It's also hard because you don't know. It's always one of the hardest parts about costume design to me is like, I would love to design it after I see the first rehearsal.
I know,
But
right?
It's in the shop already, so.
I know, it takes years for us to pre-vision things on stage. That's why we actually have the same mind as a director. We have to pre-vis the way they do and talk to them very carefully and even ask that question. Like, how is that slapping scene gonna work? And if it's really important that people are in the dark, does that mean I dress people all in black and they're in dark stage so we really can't see them? Or is everyone in screaming light so we can see them,
Yeah,
but they can't see each other? So there's a lot of questions really to ask about how the costumes would look. In just by asking, what's the tone of the opera? Or the mood of the opera? So think about the mood of each act. Each act is almost a standalone scenario. Almost, we wrap up some kind of bit of something. And then think about what that would do to the costumes. You could do it either way. I've certainly seen funny costumes. I've seen serious costumes.
Can it be a mix of the two?
Why not?
Like, I feel like. I don't know, I feel like I would do. More traditional costumes, but then some of the comedic elements, like. When she's like, oh, look at my beautiful hat, and it's like a really ugly hat. I don't know. I feel like that like adds to the. General. Like humor of the show, but keeps them in, like, they think this is very serious.
I think in Phantom, the like Christine is not dressed funny at all.
Right.
But that like diva character, I can't remember her name. She's kind of funny looking. She's
Carlotta or something like that. Something with a C.
It's like she's just huge and crazy because her character is kind of
Okay.
a funny character in this very serious play. Whereas everyone, the Phantom is a little funny to me, but he's not supposed to be funny. As a character, he's funny to me.
Right.
And so he's very serious, and everyone is very serious. You have these one or two kind of more affluent characters who are just kind of ridiculous.
Okay,
And so I think the Count and Countess being different tonally, I think, to the servants is maybe
Okay.
interesting.
okay, that sounds interesting. You also have spheres of influence here. You have Bartolo and his little minions. And they take themselves extremely seriously. You know, so what does that mean? And Marcellina's gonna be the tricky one, shapeshifter. So what's your sense of the form of language that's used by the characters? This is a very talky opera, and that's actually how the music overall sounds to me, since there are not showstopper arias, there are arias that are famous. And you only find that out when everyone claps afterwards. Like, oh, yeah, we came for that one. But if you listen to the overall, it's a lot of recitative that turns into duets, that turns into trios, and even a sextet. And it's not the big aria, little recit, big aria. It's more even in just the way I hear it. So to me, it sounds like conversation through the whole thing, pretty much. So I consider it kind of a talky opera. And you have to pay attention to who's doing what to whom. That's just so different from Wagner, you know, Ride of the Valkyries. Coming in, lots of to claim the dead people, you know, that's not it. That's just a living room, it's in a living room, a bedroom, people are talking. So what kind of language is used? I know this is in Italian.
I was gonna say it's Italian, so it feels very fancy to me.
Okay.
Very formal.
Okay. In English, did it sound fancy to you? Is it Shakespearean English?
Really, the translation didn't seem particularly formal.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the translator,
Interesting, because librettos, the translations, they translated them slightly differently.
slightly differently.
So
Yeah,
I think it's kind of up for interpretation.
okay. Were any of them formal? Any of the translations? It's a good one to check lots of librettos. A translator is making a decision, obviously.
Right.
And this is one thing they ask themselves right out of the gate, how formal or informal should my tone be, should my quality be in when I translate? So if you're not getting a bunch of fancy language, you can assume it's kind of middle of the road. This didn't strike me as street vernacular.
Yeah.
Sort of middle of the road, none of this, you know, hello, Duke, sweep of the hat, this kind of situation. So think about what that might mean for the scenario and the kind of characters. And does the music ever tell a different story than the words?
It's tough because yeah, I was gonna say I don't actually because I was trying to follow along with a lot of it with the
Mhm.
libretto.
Mhm.
I didn't get through the whole thing with the libretto, like
Mhm.
because it was long. What I did look at, it seemed like it kind of matched the music, the words at least. I found the music at its most excited when like there was a lot of funny stuff going on at once, like
Okay.
the behind the door
Uh-huh.
stuff. And when we had kind of talked about this, I think, in last class, but like when characters are singing over each other and
Okay.
stuff, it's very exciting.
Yes. Lots of frantic. Yes.
They're. I think they're telling the same story.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the most. So that's an important piece of information as well. How straightforward is this opera? How duplicitous is this opera? The only music duplicity I think that goes on is when Susanna is singing a role and the Countess is walking the garden, but we're supposed to hear Susanna's voice. So I don't think that's really duplicitous
right.
either,
Yeah.
you know, it's, this part is duplicitous. Are there calm moments? Is anyone ever like, oh, what a great day? Just glad to be here.
I think it's like you're setting up the bed at the beginning.
Okay,
It's
measuring.
the chillest part.
It is. It is. So that's interesting. Once the spring starts to coil, it doesn't stop in this opera.
Yeah.
Stage tricks, gags, or gimmicks?
Yes,
Yes,
indeed.
Tons.
the whole chair situation.
The chair, the closet, hiding under the
Right.
dress, dressing cherubino,
Jumping out a window.
jumping out a window. I made a couple of notes about, Antonio finds Cherubino's hat. That's how he knew Cherubino came out the window, or Cherubino changed clothes in my cabin. So there's lots of that kind of thing to track. Rings, a ring, a pin, that kind of thing. What role does the chorus or ensemble play?
Seemed like they came in when they needed an extra voice a lot of the time. When they bring in all the peasant girls to talk to the count and be like, thank you.
Okay,
That was a little
okay.
helpful world building, I think.
And then a wedding,
Yeah.
and have a wedding alone.
Yeah.
Okay. So they don't really serve much of a purpose. They're decorative, fill out the world. So it looks like the count actually has friends and subjects. Okay, that's good information. So we are at the end of our time, and the two important things to think about for you are 15 and 16. Are there important motifs or parallels or repetitions in the story? Why? And are there strong metaphors or similes? So we have one very strong parallel. Maybe two. We have the Count and Countess, and we have Susanna and Figaro. And that's part of 17th and 16th and 15th century drama. Is the servants have one plot line and the aristocrats have another one. So it's a double plot line right there. Are they mirroring each other? Could Susanna and Figaro become the Count and Countess in 5 years? You know, now they're the love interest. The Count and Countess were the love interest in the last opera. Are there other parallels or repetitions, things that keep happening? And if that does, that's important. Anything that repeats, it's really important. Okay, so after all that, did you like the opera?
I'm turning around on opera a little bit. I wasn't anti-opera, but I was like Faust was very interesting, but it was very serious.
Yeah.
Need it. Because I love a bunch of characters
Okay,
doing a bunch
Okay.
of things.
okay.
And normally, and like, I don't love the plot point of this law, but I kind of didn't care.
Yeah, we need a terrible impediment in order to have a plot,
Yeah.
right? It's just a device.
Yeah.
I don't think by then anyone had that law anymore. I don't know the history of law, but that was a medieval law. I don't know if it was still in effect by the 18th century. Really don't.
I'm very excited to see Barbara. It's really interesting watching the Count and Countess fall in love, knowing this.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
yeah, to go back in time and see their story.
Is Susanna involved?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
can't remember.
We're gonna get to know Figaro. We're gonna get to know our guy.
There is a maid. The maid and Figaro conspire. It is Susanna.
Oh,
I think it's Susanna. If it's not, it's a Susanna character.
okay.
Sorry, I was just looking ahead on the calendar, and so we're supposed to go to the Illuminations performance on Wednesday.
On
This
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay,
So did you make a reservation? It's free.
Yeah.
You have to make your own reservation, though I'm not allowed to do that.
it was very.
Yeah, you just got tick a thing and get a ticket. Okay, I'm only allowed to get one as a faculty person. I don't know if you get two or one as a.
I don't know, I didn't try to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Hopefully Christmas better. Yeah, by then, yeah. I don't know about it, actually.
Okay, so next time, we need to solve a couple things. We need to figure out how many of these people we want to render. And think about these questions, keep mulling over, and if you haven't listened to the entire opera because you were too busy breaking it down, now's the time to listen to it again, just have it in the background.
Now that I have a way better understanding of it.
Just keep playing it everywhere you go, so that you get a real feel for the music. Okay, great job. Wow, who knew? It's a tricky one. Okay. So next time, I guess, let me ponder, do you want to do more research, or do you want to do poses, drawing?
I have no strong opinion.
Getting phone calls,
Okay,
but not from anyone I know.
okay.
About drawing on Wednesday.
Drawing or taking this time, we'll meet to talk about what characters we should design. I guess we get to decide. And
Maybe it depends how many of us are there, because if it's just the two of us, I feel bad deciding for everybody
okay,
what the overall research is. So
Maybe
maybe
it's not good about it.
or
we can also make categories, like you can do 2 of these 3 characters,
Yeah.
2 of those 4 characters, so that everyone can make a decision.
We did that for Tempest, I
We
think.
did, yes. Yes. In general, I think you're gonna need the biggies here to get the story across, but there's not that many people in this opera. So.
split up. A bit and then or research for a bit and then draw for like a morning.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Let's just meet and see what we want to do now. We'll be prepared for any of it. Okay. Okay.
Kristen recovered.
Yes.
Ashley just fell, so.
I
don't know.
I know.
There's worse coming. It could be during dress rehearsal. Oh my god.